Have you ever felt that insistent tug, that unshakable desire for just one more bite, one more perfect moment? It's that feeling that this thing, this new car, maybe this relationship, this job, this is finally going to make me happy. It's pretty universal, isn't it? That quest for more and better chocolate, whatever your chocolate happens to be. But what happens? What truly happens deep down when that chocolate runs out? Today, we're taking a deep dive into exactly that question. We're guided by the timeless wisdom of Lama Thubten Yeshe in his remarkable book, When the Chocolate Runs Out. So our mission really is to unpack how our attachments, our deep attachments to these fleeting pleasures, often lead us down a road of dissatisfaction. And maybe more importantly, how we can discover an indestructible kind of happiness, one that comes from within, a joy that persists even when life's chocolate seems to have vanished completely.
Yeah, and Lama Yeshe was just so instrumental in bringing Tibetan Buddhism to the West. What's amazing about this book, I think, is how he takes these really complex ideas and makes them incredibly accessible, practical even. It really gives you tools, profound tools and perspective for understanding suffering and maybe changing it.
Okay, let's unpack this then. It's a really compelling starting point. Lama Yeshe opens by challenging our most, well, basic assumption about happiness, what he calls kind of humorously salvation through chocolate. Well, I love chocolate, right? For something like it. And on some level, many of us actually believe, okay, as long as I have my chocolate, I'll be happy. It feels almost that simple sometimes.
It does. And that belief, that intense longing for the next fix of whatever we think will make us happy, that really shows the power of attachment at work. It leads us to literally structure our lives around getting and keeping these things. We create this whole chocolate-based philosophy. But the central truth, the one that's frankly so hard for us to accept, is his point. Chocolate comes, chocolate goes, chocolate disappears. It's not permanent.
And that's where the problem kicks in, isn't it? When the chocolate disappears, or maybe even just melts a little bit, we get upset, we get disturbed. But Lama Yeshe makes such a clear distinction here. He says, it's not the absence of chocolate that's making us unhappy, it's our fixed ideas and our misunderstanding the nature of chocolate. We just fail to grasp that simple but really profound truth that all pleasures are impermanent. They don't last.
Right. And what's really interesting is that the alternative he offers isn't some kind of grim acceptance or deprivation. Not at all. Instead, Lama Yeshe points towards a deep, abiding joy of silent experience, a joy that comes from your own mind. This kind of happiness, he really emphasizes, is always available to you. Right now, you can tap into it simply by studying your own mind. Self-awareness is the key.
Which brings us straight to the sources of dissatisfaction. Because it's pretty clear reading this that the sense world alone just cannot satisfy the human mind. Not ultimately. Think about that cycle he describes.
Yeah.
We experience something pleasant, attachment kicks in, right? Which leads to craving when it fades. Then, if feelings are unpleasant, aversion arises. That disturbs our peace. And when things are just neutral or boring, that's when ignorance creeps in, makes us kind of ignore reality.
Yeah, and Lama Yeshe just sums it up perfectly. The nature of this mind of attachment, aversion, and ignorance is dissatisfaction. It's this constant background hum of things not being quite right.
It's a gnawing feeling.
And if you connect this to the bigger picture, it's a cycle you've probably experienced since you were a kid. Remember, craving ice cream or chocolate, thinking, oh, when I grow up, I'll have all I want. Then I'll be happy. Well, now you probably can have all the ice cream you want, but are you satisfied? Probably not. So we upgrade our desires, right? A car, a house, a partner, a better job, only to find, uh-oh, the car is a problem, the house is a problem, relationships have problems. You have that moment of realization, oh, wait, this isn't actually satisfaction. And the crucial, maybe uncomfortable point is this. Wherever you go, your dissatisfied mind is still there. You take it with you.
Okay, this next point, this is where it gets really interesting because it flips the script on blame. Lama Yeshe presents this really challenging idea about the origin of our problems. He says, point blank, they're our own creation.
Wow.
Yeah. He argues we shouldn't blame society or our parents or our bosses or anyone else, which is pretty revolutionary for most of us, I think.
He really elaborates on that beautifully, though. He says, look, if someone physically beats you up, you'd react instantly, right? You'd defend yourself. But this worrying mind, this constant loop of my problems, my problems, my problems, that beats us up daily, year after year, and we just kind of sit there hoping it'll go away. He uses that powerful ocean analogy. Dealing with one wave, one apparent problem doesn't stop the ocean. You just swap one problem for another. The basic problem, the ocean itself, remains. He says, sublimating one problem into another solves nothing. It's merely change.
So what does this mean for you listening right now? If Lama Yeshe is right, and the real roots of suffering, the actual roots of all our problems are in the mind, well, that actually puts the power back in our hands, doesn't it?
Exactly. It means the place we can actually do something about our problems is also right here, in the mind.
But why do we even feel problems in the first place?
Well, Lama Yeshe traces all of the problems of the world back to this fundamental feeling of not being whole, this sense of lack. And that feeling prompts us to turn outward, expectantly towards other people or things for whatever we imagine we're missing. But he powerfully reinforces this idea. You are responsible for your own problems, just as you are responsible for your own liberation or enlightenment. So problems seen this way, they're actually a kind of gift, even a teacher. They guide us towards real understanding if we let them.
That's a genuinely transformative insight. You don't have to change anything external. The only change you have to make is within your mind. It just completely shifts your focus, doesn't it?
It really does.
And that leads us right into the concept of attachment and release. Lama Yeshe points out something we probably all know intuitively. No matter how much of something you get, it never satisfies your desire for better or more.
Never enough.
Right. This unceasing desire is suffering. He says its very nature is emotional frustration.
And you can see for yourself how attachment works. It's almost silly sometimes. He gives this great example. Imagine a friend brings a delicious cake into a room, but gives it to only one person there. He says most of us instantly would feel upset, maybe jealous, even a bit angry.
Yeah, I can picture that.
Instead of genuinely rejoicing, thinking, oh, I really hope she enjoys that cake, our minds are actually running this script. What I want is for me to be happy. I don't want her to be happy. But when you see that clearly, see it as attachment, that self-centered thought starts to lose its grip.
He explains that when you truly recognize that energy force of attachment, a pure thought, a thought pointing towards liberation follows automatically. You don't even have to force it. And when those pure thoughts arise, your life naturally becomes more positive. But crucially, he says, you can't stop attachment by generating some kind of radical rejecting mind. It's not about fighting it forcefully.
Right, suppression doesn't work. And this is where understanding the evolution of attachment is so key. He says, in the arising of attachment, it's ego that comes first. Delusion starts with ego. Attachment follows. It's a sequence.
Okay, so ego first.
Yeah, the ego builds up this kind of hallucinated I, this separate self. Then it labels objects out there as desirable, attractive. And then attachment comes along and clings to them. It's like a psychological chain reaction, a trap.
And often, it's not just that we passively experience it. He says we actually welcome intellectual garbage and negative energy into our minds. Like we put out a big welcome sign.
Right.
He tells that story about the yogi who was offered yoga, right? And he sat there worrying, oh, is there going to be enough for me?
Yeah.
Typical attachment mind. Then, realizing his own clinging, when the yogurt was actually offered, he instantly turned his bowl upside down and said, no thanks, I've already had mine.
Perfect. It's a brilliant antidote to that clinging.
It really is.
And it reinforces this profound idea. Your own attachment is the cause of every single problem that you experience, period. And so when we talk about liberation, Lama Yeshe is very clear. It means a mind that has reached beyond attachment, beyond the dualistic mind, a mind free from those rigid boxes of this versus that, good versus bad.
Okay, so moving on to the path to release. It seems natural to start with ego barges in. You just mentioned ego as the starting point for attachment, but how would you sort of define this core concept of ego for someone new to these ideas?
Well, simply put, Lama Yeshe defines ego as the mistaken conception that yourself is independent, permanent, and inherently existent. It's fundamentally a misunderstanding. He calls it a hallucination not founded in reality, and the king of problems. He adds that ignorance causes ego. It's a mental concept, right? Not something physical or solid.
Right.
And he uses this really vivid analogy. He says, imagine someone just rushed into your house uninvited. You'd be upset, right? You'd probably tell them to leave. Yet when this powerfully negative energy force he calls ego barges into our minds, we often basically say, oh, welcome, ego. Please come in. How are you? We treat it like it belongs there, like it's really part of us.
So instead of bowing down and serving it or trying to run away from it, Lama Yeshe encourages us to simply just watch it. He says, when you give your ego the wisdom eye, it disappears all by itself. How does that work? How does just watching it make it vanish?
Well, the act of watching with the wisdom eye isn't passive. It's the mind applying clear, Non-judgmental awareness to how the ego operates, its tricks, its claims. When you shine the light of truth, of clear seeing, on a hallucination, it tends to dissolve, doesn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't.
When you realize the ego's claims of being permanent and independent are just false, it loses its power, its grip on you, and that ties beautifully into humility. Lama Yeshe says, the proud mind is like a desert. Nothing can grow in a mind full of pride. Pride is just the ego puffing itself up, creating this barren landscape where wisdom can't take root.
Okay, let's shift to angry interpretations. Some people, believe you get rid of anger by expressing it, just letting it all out, catharsis. But Lama Yeshe argues, you're just collecting more anger in your mind when you do that. So what's the alternative path?
Instead, the practice is to recognize anger as anger when it arises. And crucially, understand that it arises simply because of causes and conditions. It's not inherent, it's conditional. He gives this really poignant example. Imagine you have an only child, and they do silly, maybe even frustrating things. You still love them, right?
Of course.
You understand deep down they're under the control of his superficial mind, maybe oppressed by ego and attachment. That underlying love and understanding allows you to work with their foolishness rather than just exploding in anger. He suggests cultivating that same kind of compassion for all beings, even those whose actions provoke our anger. We recognize they too are caught under the sway of their own ego and attachments.
So the deep root of negativity lies within our own minds, but
we hallucinate.
Yeah, we hallucinatingly conclude problems are outside, and lost in confusion, we get angry at others. So he's clear.
The best way to meet anger, ultimately, is with love, compassion, and understanding its true nature. It's like a profound emotional shift.
It really is. Okay, next up, the heart of the Dharma. Lama Yeshe gives a strong warning here. He says, it is very dangerous to be content with the intellectual explanation of Dharma and not to practice it. Why dangerous? Because, he says, ultimately, words are not reality. Ideas are not reality.
Right. He makes a distinction between, say, a scholar who can talk about Dharma very eloquently, maybe superficially, and an experienced practitioner whose words carry a kind of blessed energy. That energy touches your heart because it comes from direct, lived experience, not just book learning. And importantly, he stresses you don't have to believe in anything specific to practice Dharma. It's about treating yourself wisely, finding satisfaction within through your own experience, not dogma.
What's fascinating here is that this echoes the Buddha himself. The Buddha reportedly said, belief is not important. Don't believe what I say just because I said it.
Exactly.
He encouraged people, use your wisdom to check that they fit your psychological makeup, your own mind. It's all about personal verification, experience.
Precisely. And Buddhism offers, thousands upon thousands of methods tailored for different individuals. He says, if you find the Buddha's teachings complicated, it is because you have made them so. The emphasis is always on what works, what you can experience. And he even says, don't get attached to any ideas, not even the ideas of the Buddha or the Dharma itself. It's about letting go, not collecting more concepts.
Which flows perfectly into this idea of inner psychology. Lama Yeshe makes a pretty bold statement. The Buddha's idea is that everybody should become an inner psychologist. The path to liberation, he says, it starts with self-knowledge, plain and simple. To liberate yourself, you must know yourself.
And Buddhist psychology gives us a framework. It describes 6 basic disturbing emotions: ignorance, attachment, anger, pride, deluded doubt, and distorted views. These are the troublemakers in the mind. And the Dharma view of, say, mental illness, as Lama Yeshe puts it, refers to a mind that does not see reality. It's about a lack of internal clarity, not necessarily an external label.
So instead of fearing negative states of mind when they pop up, his advice is to actually examine it more closely. He says, digesting your emotions with wisdom is really worthwhile. It's about processing, understanding, not just pushing them away.
Absolutely. And if you really connect this to the bigger picture, he suggests that once you truly realize how your own mental problems evolve, you'll never blame any other living being for how you feel, ever again.
That's huge.
It is, because then all beings, even difficult ones, become like friends and teachers. Their actions just reflect the same underlying patterns you're working within yourself.
He also really emphasizes accepting yourself, the good and the bad, as the starting point for transformation. Because, as he puts it, your bad is bad for you because your mind calls it bad. It's our judgment that solidifies the negativity.
Right, the labeling.
Exactly. Okay, moving on to qualities of mind. Our mental attitude, our mindset, basically acts as a filter for everything we experience. So, Lama Yeshe suggests a kind of daily intention to guide us. For the rest of my life, it is my responsibility to grow in mindfulness and happiness.
And he tells that great story about Dromtonpa, the famous yogi. There was this man doing all sorts of religious practices, circumambulating holy sites, studying texts, meditating. And Dromtonpa kept telling him, no matter what he was doing, wouldn't it be better if you practiced Dharma?
The man must have been so frustrated.
Totally exasperated. He finally asks, what more can I possibly do? And Dromtonpa's final reply was simply, turn your mind away from attachment to the worldly life. That story just powerfully shows that the outward actions, they're secondary. The real work, the core practice, happens inside in the mind. Inner transformation is key.
He also explains there are two aspects to the mind. There's the relative mind, that's the dualistic, agitated one we usually operate with. And then there's the absolute mind, which is beyond duality, beyond this versus that. He notes that the appearance of two things always creates a problem. What exactly does he mean by that, two things creating a problem?
He means our fundamental habit of splitting reality up, categorizing everything. Good or bad, self or other, mine or not mine. This constant dualistic thinking, this separation, inevitably creates conflict, tension, and attachment. He uses the analogy of boiling water. Even when the water is turbulent and bubbling, the individual water droplet itself is still inherently clear.
Okay.
Similarly, he says, the mind's basic nature remains clear, conscious, and ultimately liberated, even when it's obscured by the agitation and complexity of our dualistic thoughts and views. That pure nature is always there underneath.
This naturally raises an important question, one that comes up a lot in discussions like this, the indisputable fact of karma. Now, karma is often misunderstood, isn't it? People think fate, destiny.
Right, fatalism.
But Lama Yeshe defines it very differently. He states quite boldly, karma is not theoretical philosophy. It's Buddhist science. What does he mean by that?
He means karma isn't some mystical belief system. It's simply nothing more or less than your experiences of body and mind. It's the law of causes and their effects. He sees it as a natural law governing all physical and non-physical phenomena, as reliable and verifiable in its own way as physics. And you simply can't outsmart karma. It's just how things work.
How actions have consequence.
Exactly. He explains that the uncontrolled body, speech, and mind are manifestations of karma. Our habitual, unmindful actions create our reality. So the path to purifying karma, to changing those patterns, involves watching your body, watching your mouth, and watching your mind. It boils down to mindful awareness of your actions and their underlying motivations.
So this self-awareness naturally leads to self-control. And when difficult emotions come up, it's not about bottling them up or suppressing them.
No, definitely not.
It's about examining them, digesting them with wisdom, so they can naturally dissolve without causing more harm.
Precisely. And the key, Lama Yeshe states very clearly, to knowing whether an action is ultimately positive or negative isn't just the action itself, it's the motivation behind it.
The intention.
The intention, yes. He even goes so far as to say, morality is the wisdom that understands the nature of the mind. It's not about rigid external rules, but about cultivating inner understanding and beneficial intentions.
He also brings in this incredibly powerful and hopeful idea. No past misdeed is so great that we cannot still do the work to find lasting peace in this life.
Yeah.
He uses the example of a king who apparently killed his own father, a terrible act, but through the Buddha's wisdom, eventually realized total liberation by metaphorically killing the attachment and deluded mind that drove the action.
It shows the power of transformation.
Absolutely. And underscores his point that evil is nothing other than the manifestation of ego and attachment. It's not some external source we fight, but an internal dynamic we can understand and transform. Okay, let's move into part 3. The method, meditation, and practical application. Lama Yeshe clearly identifies meditation as the principal method for discovering right action. He puts it very simply. Attachment is the problem. The solution is meditation.
Yeah, he sees meditation as the primary way to cultivate that inner calm and satisfaction we've been talking about. It's how you transform suffering, using it as fuel for liberation. And profoundly, he says, meditation itself is wisdom. It's not just the technique leading to wisdom. The practice is the cultivation of insight itself.
So for you, the listener, may be feeling a bit intimidated. He offers encouragement. You never know what your level of attainment can be until you try. He addresses common fears, like distractions or thinking you're not good enough, assuring that success is possible, regardless of past issues. It's really about just starting, dipping your toe in.
And he stresses gradual integration. You can't just jump right in the deep end. It's not about forcing some intense state. And while we often want instant results, he reminds us true control is a natural state that arises moment to moment. And importantly, there's no such thing as instant mental control. It requires patient cultivation, like learning any skill.
And he defines meditation very broadly too, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Real meditation can be brought into every aspect of your daily life. It's not just about sitting quietly on a cushion for 20 minutes.
Exactly.
It's more like a continuous practice, a cure for the disease, which he identifies as an uncontrolled, undisciplined mind.
And he reiterates that core theme of responsibility. We have created the bondage in which we find ourselves, and it is up to us to create the circumstances for our release. We hold the keys, we are our own jailers, but also our own liberators.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit further then and look at how to meditate, according to Lama Yeshe. It seemed to begin with raising the right motivation. This involves investigating your own nature and your false conceptions. What does that investigation actually look like in practice?
Well, it often looks like the practice he calls watching your mind. It's quite simple, really. You relax the body and mind and just observe thoughts as they arise, without getting attached to them, without judging them. You just watch. He explains that when you watch your thoughts with wisdom, meaning with that clear, non-judgmental awareness, they disappear of their own accord. The observation itself is the act of letting go, of not fueling them.
He then introduces using visualizations. And he makes a great point. We visualize all day long, don't we? Planning breakfast, making shopping lists, daydreaming.
Constantly.
So the challenge isn't learning to visualize, it's learning to harness that already well-developed skill and make it into something wholesome and useful.
Right. And he describes some specific visualizations you can use in meditation, like seeing yourself as a transparent, radiant Buddha figure, or visualizing other people as bodhisattvas embodying compassion, or even mentally washing your divine body with blissful energy. These aren't just flights of fancy. They're targeted mental exercises designed to shift your perspective and actively cultivate positive qualities like clarity, compassion, and bliss.
He also mentioned meditative breathing techniques. For example, using the breath to purify the mind, breathing out impure desire through one nostril, hatred through the other, ignorance through both. Things like that.
Yes, using the breath as an anchor and a tool for transformation. And another really crucial point he makes is about working with expectation. This is a big one for meditators. He says, too much expectation is a great hindrance to successful meditation.
That makes sense. Getting frustrated if you don't feel blissful immediately.
Exactly. He uses the analogy of a brand new driver versus an experienced one. The new driver is often tense, hyper-focused, trying desperately to control everything. The experienced driver is relaxed, fluid, confident. He says, if we want to experience a similar bliss in meditation, we must learn to let go of our expectations. Just like driving, meditation becomes smoother and more natural with relaxed practice, not by forcing or striving.
Another really important step he outlines is checking up with your own experience. He describes this not as vague introspection, but as an extremely scientific process.
Yeah, he really challenges us here. He asks us to examine our own minds as diligently, as scientifically, as we examine material things we want to understand or fix. Checking up with your mind is of utmost importance, he stresses. It's about rigorous, honest self-inquiry. What's actually going on in there?
And Lama Yeshe asks that really pointed question, almost a jolt, doesn't he? Shouldn't your goals in life be higher than those of chickens and dogs?
Yes. It's provocative, for sure.
It really is.
Yeah.
But it's his way of asking. Are we truly aspiring to our highest potential as human beings, with our capacity for wisdom and compassion, or are we just endlessly chasing basic, instinctual desires like animals?
And when problems or difficulties arise during this checking up process, he advises a simple approach. Introduce the problem to yourself, greet it. Here's this kind of problem. Hello, problem.
Just acknowledging it.
Just acknowledging it calmly, without judgment, without immediately trying to push it away or fix it. And he adds that when you check your own mind properly, honestly, you stop blaming others for your problems. The focus shifts inward.
Even our approach to sleeping and waking up can be transformed through this kind of practice. He suggests meditation can prepare the mind for more restful, beneficial sleep. And he even says the dream state is much more powerful and effective than the waking one for certain kinds of insight.
That's fascinating. He notes that our dream experiences, which feel incredibly real while they're happening, are ultimately only the projections of our dreaming mind. They aren't solid external realities. Then he draws this incredibly powerful parallel. In a very similar way, everything we experience while we are awake, including our strong sense of self, is also empty of true existence. It's all, in a deeper sense, a projection of our mind, shaped by our karma and perceptions.
Wow. That leads us towards a practice he calls leading an inner revolution, exchanging self with others. You might notice Tongwen. He describes this as truly revolutionary.
Yeah.
Why? Because it completely flips our usual self-centered orientation on its head.
It really does. It's a powerful compassion practice. Essentially, it involves using the breath. On the out-breath, you visualize sending out white light, all your positive energy, your peace, your wisdom, sharing it generously with all beings. Then on the in-breath, you consciously breathe in all their suffering, their pain, their negativity, visualizing it as thick black smoke.
Taking it on.
Taking it on, yes. You visualize this dark energy coming into your heart where it hits the core of your own self-cherishing, your ego and attachment, completely destroying it, and then exploding into radiant light, the light of wisdom and compassion. It's a radical transformation practice.
That sounds intense
Yeah,
and maybe difficult for people starting out.
it can be. So he offers a very practical tip. If you have difficulty taking the suffering of others onto yourself, first practice on yourself.
How does that work?
You breathe in your own suffering, your own pain, fears, and frustrations, also in the form of black smoke. You work with your own difficulties first, using the same visualization of transforming them into light at your heart. It helps build that muscle of compassion and transformation gently.
That makes sense. Okay, finally, let's move into part 4. Profound insights, emptiness, and universal love. Now, emptiness is probably one of the most discussed and maybe misunderstood concepts in Buddhism. Lama Yeshe explains that we typically live believing our misconceptions and projections of our ignorant mind are true. We take appearances at face value. But he also clarifies that perceiving emptiness does not require some special mental state. So what is emptiness, according to him, and why isn't it some kind of mystical trance?
Right, that's key. Emptiness, or shunyata, it isn't about things not existing at all. That's nihilism, a common misunderstanding. It's about realizing that nothing, not ourself, not the chocolate we crave, nothing exists independently from its own side, inherently.
So not existing on its own.
Exactly. Everything arises interdependently. It depends on causes, conditions, parts, and importantly, on our own mind labeling it. Lama Yeshe explains that just recognizing our 5 senses' gravitational attachment to the sense world and beginning to realize that what we perceive isn't truly out there existing independently from its own side, that is beginning to study emptiness. It's a profound shift from seeing things as solid, fixed, separate entities to understanding their interconnected, fluid, and ultimately empty nature, empty of that fantasized independent existence.
He uses the analogy of a rainbow, right? A rainbow clearly appears it exists in a conventional sense, but it doesn't exist concretely from its own side. Depends on sunlight, raindrops, the observer's perception.
Perfect analogy.
Similarly, he says, we and all other phenomena without exception are empty of even the smallest atom of inherent existence. Sounds really mind-bending, but the goal here is practical, isn't it? Not just philosophical.
Absolutely practical. He says, what we should aim for is the experience of pleasure without attachment. Understanding emptiness helps dissolve that clinging. The practice becomes trying to see all appearances as illusory, lacking concreteness. Like magic tricks or dream images they appear, but they aren't solid. As some lamas say, not seeing is the perfect seeing. Meaning, not seeing things as inherently real, independent entities is the truly accurate wisdom perception.
So how does this understanding of emptiness connect to impermanence? We get upset because we expect impermanent things, relationships, possessions, our own bodies to last forever.
Precisely.
But Lama Yeshe is very blunt. When it's time for something to break, it's going to break. Our wishes, our attachments have absolutely nothing to do with it. Things change. That's their nature.
And he explains how our ego jumps in and exaggerates pain, solidifies feelings, makes them seem so heavy and permanent. My pain. But if we can realize the empty, constructed nature of that feeling, even while experiencing it, then the pain will be digested by your wisdom and disappear. It loses its solidity, its sting. The key, he says, and this applies during both life and death, is to recognize illusions as illusions, projections as projections, and fantasies as fantasies. In this way, we become free.
And this freedom comes from cultivating what he calls the mind of wisdom. True wisdom isn't just intellectual knowledge. It's the ability to integrate diverse experiences, even difficult ones, and it banishes fear. He says simply, a mind with understanding functions clearly. A clear mind is a positive mind.
And he asserts that our fundamental human nature is actually fundamentally pure egoless, just as the sky is by nature fundamentally clear.
That's a beautiful image.
Isn't it? The ego, the disturbing emotions, they're like clouds that temporarily obscure that clear sky. They aren't the nature of the sky itself, he adds. The narrow mind rejects. Wisdom accepts. Wisdom has space for everything.
And this spaciousness of the wisdom mind allows us to begin embracing all beings equally. He points out how we usually operate. We choose just one small thing, maybe one person, one favorite object, and we grossly exaggerate the value of the one we like while ignoring or rejecting everything else.
Tunnel vision.
Exactly. His call is to try to be totally awake instead of obsessed with just one atom, to open up our awareness.
And he draws a very sharp distinction here. Attachment and genuine love are completely different in nature. Attachment is fundamentally self-centered, clinging, conditional. Genuine love is expansive, unconditional, wishing others well. He reminds us, think about it. Every happiness and benefit you have ever experienced has come from others, from parents, friends, strangers, society. Without receiving the continual kindness of others, you'd find it impossible to live. Recognizing this dependency naturally fuels gratitude and love.
And this recognition of interconnectedness and kindness naturally leads towards developing bodhicitta, which he defines as the heart that embraces all beings equally, deeply wishing to be of service to all beings.
The motivation of enlightenment.
Right. And that ultimately, the entire practice of the Buddhist path is to be of maximum benefit to others. It shifts the focus entirely from me to we.
He uses that incredibly powerful analogy of seeing your own dear mother trapped in a blazing fire to convey the urgency we should feel about helping all beings who are trapped in the fires of suffering. But he cautions, while that urgency is important, it is much better to have calm, understanding wisdom, gradually cultivating bodhicitta. It needs to be a steady, wise, sustainable development, not just a frantic emotional reaction.
And as a kind of stepping stone towards this universal love, he briefly touches on cultivating equilibrium or equanimity, learning to see beyond our usual categories of friend, enemy, and stranger. This practice opens the tight, narrow mind to an incredible universal spaciousness.
And that monk's patient story he tells is such a great illustration of the gap between just knowing something intellectually and actually having it ingrained as experience. The monk knew about patience, but his ingrained habits took over instantly.
Right, the intellectual understanding wasn't integrated.
Exactly. Lama Yeshe uses it to remind us that from a certain perspective, misery and ecstasy are equally disturbed. If you're wildly attached to pleasure, ecstasy, or intensely averse to pain, misery, your mind is still swinging wildly, uncontrolled. True freedom, true equanimity lies beyond both extremes.
Finally, he briefly discusses true charity or generosity. He notes it's extremely difficult because true generosity must be without a trace of miserliness, without any clinging.
And without pride or ego involved.
Right, not giving to feel good about yourself. He says it requires a profound understanding of emptiness to be able to truly give without any attachment to the gift, the recipient, or the act of giving itself. Wow, what a journey we've taken today. Really, from that simple, relatable idea of a chocolate-based philosophy all the way to these profound depths of inner wisdom, emptiness, and universal love. Lama Yeshe's core message seems to echo throughout, doesn't it? True, lasting happiness isn't something external you go out and acquire. It's like a boundless mind already within you, just waiting to be tapped.
Beautifully put. And his afterword offers such practical, warm encouragement. He says, share your love, your wisdom, and your wealth, and serve other beings as much as possible. Interesting. And also, try to be happy in your practice, to be satisfied with your life, be reasonable in the way you grow, and don't ever think that it is too late. There's always potential for change.
So as you, our listener, go about your day, maybe just consider this thought inspired by Lama Yeshe's teachings. We have been asleep, caught in illusions for countless lives, perhaps. Now it's time to wake up.